Now, as I promised here, some really smart guests. I want to introduce you to them right now. I am joined now by Al Vivian, who is a diversity consultant based out of Atlanta, and we have a diversity and inclusion expert here. His name is Buck Davis. Buck and Al, thank you both for coming in today. And you've heard the entire transcript. Yes. You've heard the entire conversation. You've listened to it. Let's talk about the N-word here, because that's really what gets everyone's attention. Al, I'll start with you. Even though I know that you said that wasn't the biggest thing that really upset you about this, but let's stick with the N-word right now.
Okay.
Should someone like Dr. Laura know better than to use the N-word on a show where she has millions of listeners to a black caller? Is it appropriate?
I'd say it's definitely inappropriate. In fact, I think what we should pay attention to is just what you're saying, the appropriate standard, not the double standard. People say, well, if the comedians can say it, then we can say it also. Well, I expect more from a doctor than I do from a comedian, so that was inappropriate. In particular, the caller was calling in because they needed help. She said that my husband's actions hurt me, and Dr. Laura beat her up.
What about, okay, so the use of the N-word. And let's just be frank here. It's used in music. We had this conversation today when we were talking about doing this story. We hear it. One of our writers said, you know, my teenage daughter listens to it on the iPod. She hears that word over and over and over again. But does that give Dr. Laura license to use that word in the way she did?
No, absolutely not. It's a volatile word. And for the white people of America, you need to know we don't use it. Don't sing it, don't say it, don't write it, don't quote it. Don't do any of that because it carries different meaning when you're outside of the group.
But, okay, Buck. So there are people who are sitting at home saying, Buck, what do you mean? White people don't use it. It has a different meaning. What do you mean by that? Why can't I use it? Because why can't a white person use this word? Everybody... It's used in songs. People, I heard someone in the restaurant the other night using it, and I turned around and looked at him, and he used it again. I turned around and looked at him. He didn't get the point. But why shouldn't white people use it?
Because it is a word steeped in hate. It comes from a place of demoralizing an entire group of people. It carries no value. It's a divisive word. And for anybody to use it, I think everybody should mix it. It needs to be out of our vocabulary. However, we know that people do use it. It carries different meaning depending on the context in which it's said. But to keep us safe, we need to not use it ever. Because it's trouble for us, especially white people.
Yeah.
It's a nasty word anyway, but it's trouble. It's trouble for us white people. Let it go.
All right, so, you know, I've talked to people like the Reverend Al Sharpton and others have tried to ban the use of this word. They don't want to use. Rappers use it, though. People make money off of it.
Yeah.
Still wrong.
Yeah.
It's still wrong. As Buck said, it's wrong for anybody to use it. But in addition, you add to it, it is a little more offensive when someone outside of the group uses it. I'll put it to you this way. We all have more freedom inside a group than we have outside of a group. Example, if you have brothers and sisters and you all talk about your mother, you can get away with that. But if I walk up and I talk about your mom, I'm going to get a Class A beat down, and I should, because I'm not in that group. I don't have that freedom that's within that group. So if you're outside the group, you don't have the freedom.
And it's also about context, don't you think?
Yes,
Because,
it is.
Because I was watching an incredible journalist who I really respect, and I said, she's a bad you-know-what, right? And you said, that means good. That means good, right? So it's context.
Yeah, it is. Context means everything. When I was on the way to the studio today, I asked 5 people on the way in, is it ever okay to use the N-word? All 5 said, absolutely not. Let it go. And yet, people do use it in rap videos, in music, and song. Yeah. It doesn't make it right, though. For us, trying to build better relationships with different types of people, it doesn't do anything for us as a human race. It only widens the gap.
Okay, all right. So you've spoken to white people. You said white people give it up. That
give
was
it
your
up.
quote.
Yeah, it's going to get us in trouble.
You speak to black people who use it. What do you say?
I speak to black and whites and everybody else.
What do you say to black people who use that word?
Don't use it. Don't use it. It's inappropriate. How can we ask whites not to use the word if we use the word? It sends a confusing message. That's the one thing that Dr. Laura said that I really agree with. She mentioned in her big spiel that, hey, it's confusing, and it is confusing. If I say it, and he feels he can say it, and the closer we are, the more he'll feel he can say it. And I think it's inappropriate, period.
Yeah. It's weird how that word, and I'm sure there are others, that really stings when you hear it in public.
Yes.
Even when I hear it in music, when I hear it in music, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't need to hear that.
Right.
And I get a lot of flack for that. I'll be really honest with you. I just don't think it's needed. But when I hear it, especially in public places, it's almost like someone's using it like man, or I told that guy, or I told that gal, and it's like N-word this, N-word that, and it's like, don't you know like what that word means to people whose shoulder you stand on. Al?
Yeah. Oh, there's nothing else to add to that other than ditto. You're absolutely right. It's an offensive word. It has a history of hatred to it, so you shouldn't use it, period.
Okay. Does that make, because we always talk about, well, you know, what is racist, what's not, and we kind of throw that word around. Does that make Dr. Laura racist, or did she just do something that, was this just a mistake on her part to do it? I don't know if it necessarily makes her racist.
I don't think it necessarily makes her racist. Here's what I do believe, though. I do believe that she should have known better, one. Two, she jumped quickly to, you add it to all the other things she said. As Buck says, context is everything. You add to that, she talked about don't NAACP me.
Oh, we're going into that. Don't get ahead of me, but go ahead. I'll let you finish your point, but we're going to talk about all that.
She spoke from the entire time of a stance of superiority, as if I know and you don't.
Yeah.
Even to the point where she says, you know, you have to know that that's why blacks voted for Obama. You have to know. Don't you know that? As if to say, she's the expert on blackness. I know.
Okay, but before we take the break, I'm going to talk about what we're going to talk about after the break and onward in this national conversation that we're having today about race and about the N-word and about all of this. When she brings up something that many African Americans deal with, and that is, how do you feel as a black person? Well, shouldn't you answer, you feel like you're the African American authority many times, and I know you have a very interesting concept about that. What do you say?
Oh, with us asking black people, a black person to speak on behalf of the entire African American population?
Yeah.
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. We can ask a black person, give me the perspective of a African American. Give me your take on it, Don Lemon. As a black person, how do you feel about this? But when I go to ask you to speak on behalf of an entire population, that's when we cross the line. Because what the notion underneath that, I believe, is there a fundamental belief that you people are all alike. That's what it sounds like. Just the use of the word, you people.
That was sort of what you said behind the Obama comment.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you, hold that. Do you ever get asked that as a white person? Hang on. Don't answer that. Do you ever get asked what you think as a white person? Thank you very much. We're going to be back with more of this conversation with our guests after the break. Plus this, a man accused of...